Hi guys. Now, welcome to Module 2 of your BTEC Level 1 Health and Safety in a Construction Environment course. Now, in today's module, we're going to be covering manual handling. By the end of this module, you should be able to understand or describe safe manual handling, detail your responsibility when it comes to safe manual handling, list the aids available to help with lifting and carrying within a construction environment, and understand how to report problems when lifting and carrying. Now, one of the things that I have to say here is that manual handling is the biggest cause of injury in the construction environment. Now, when you say manual handling, it's not just, sort of picking things up. It sort of relates to also lifting things, lowering things, pushing things, pulling things, and just generally carrying objects or load within the construction environment or anywhere really. Now, if you don't lift things or carry things around correctly, you can actually cause injury. And some of those injury include spinal injury, so that's where you hurt your back, muscle strain, cuts and abrasion, or broken bones. And that's just basically, a very basic list of what can happen to you if you don't lift objects or observe correct manual handling. The other thing that actually can be damaged include material and equipment, the work area, and customer property. So when we talk about the work area, it could be that you were carrying a box of tools or nails or whatever, I don't know, very heavy material, and you don't lift it, you hurt your back, you have to drop the whole thing, everything splatters everywhere, people are hurt, properties hurt, the work areas maybe could be damaged. But the most important thing really is that you need to care for yourself, because you are quite important when it comes to um, you know the work environment. Now, there are a couple of regulations when it comes to manual handling, but before we get into that, I do actually want to expand a little bit on manual handling. Okay, so just going back to the previous slide. um, I have to say here that handling heavy objects is not the only cause of injury. Harm can also result from doing a task repetitively. So if you are bricklaying or someone's bricklaying and they're doing it in a really awkward position, that can actually cause harm to themselves, okay? Um, the other thing is injuries can be caused not just by the weight, but the amount of times you have to either pick up the item, carry the item, the distance that you're carrying the item, the height that you're actually picking the item up from or putting it down, any twisting, any bending, stretching, or any other awkward posture that you might get into while doing a task or performing or manually handling an object. And if you don't observe manual handling correctly, you might find that you get injured, and an injured person might actually find that their ability to do their job is affected, because it will have an impact on your lifestyle, any leisure activities, your ability to sleep, or any other future job prospects. So manual handling is actually very, very important. And the other thing I have to say is that it's essential that employers also manage the risk to their employees. So if possible, try not to carry out any manual handling tasks, and where necessary, just use the right equipment, so things like trolleys, forklifts, and so on. Okay, right. So next thing, there are a couple of regulations that need to be adhered to when it comes to manual handling. Okay, and those include the Manual Handling Operations Regulation for 2004, and that basically states that you should avoid hazardous manual handling operations where possible, You should obviously carry out a risk assessment. Remember, we talked about that in module one. Risk assessment is absolutely important. Employees must take care of their own health and safety, take care of the health and safety of others who might be affected by their actions. And that, again, if you do your risk assessment properly, you should know this. You should tell your employer if you're going to carry out hazardous lifting. And the other regulation is lifting operations and lifting equipment regulations, and that was 1998. And that covers, or that talks about, in summary, really, covers equipment used for lifting or lowering loads. And the equipment should basically be suitable for use, positioned to avoid accidents, and marked with any necessary information. So there are things, obviously that you need to, or that are there in place, or regulations in place for you to adhere to when it comes to manual handling. Now, when you go to your workbooks, you should be looking at pages 15 to 16, and that basically talks about manual handling, what you need to do, and there are a couple of questions and probably scenarios there as well. And I just thought, to add some general points, there is no shame in asking for help when you're faced with a lifting task, okay? So it's not about who's the bravest or the strongest. You should ask for help where necessary. Help can be assistance from other people, or it can be the use of a lifting equipment. So there might be either forklifts or elevators or platforms that you could use. Also, injuries can actually vary in seriousness. So from a small sprain to a major spinal injury, abdominal damage, because again, when you're lifting, especially if it's heavy, you're using your core muscles, and you could actually hurt yourself, and that could actually, have an impact on your life. There are also risks to broken bones and any injuries that can be caused if you drop the heavy load. So that could be like, if you drop something on your feet, cuts you. So it could be that you've picked up an item, it's cut your hand, you've panicked, dropped it, broken a bone, sharp things. Oh my God, I don't even want to think about, the horror of what could happen if you don't observe safe manual handling. In extreme cases, manual handling accidents can actually be fatal. An example of that would be large objects being dropped or falling onto someone. Okay, so it is serious business, and it is something that has to be observed carefully. Other people can be injured by incorrect manual handling. For example, when you're carrying a long object such as length of wood or pipe, you have to be very careful. Again, this is risk assessment. Look around. Is there anyone around you? Can the pipes or the wood poking out sort of hurt somebody? So these are basically just some additional things for you to think about when it comes to manual handling. Now, over the next few slides, we will be looking at how to um, safely lift an object. I have to say here that some of us, myself, including, I am guilty of sort of literally just bending down, not thinking about it, and just picking up an object. Okay, but there are safe ways of picking up heavy objects, or and also to add that some objects can be heavier than they look. Okay, so don't just think, oh, I'm going to pick it up. You actually have to assess things. So unsafe manual handling can cause accidents, and it can actually lead to permanent disability. So just think about that. So first things first, step one here, it says obviously you should check the object. Okay, you should look at it, maybe try to push it with your hand, or try sort of use your foot to just gauge how heavy it is. If it's heavy, you might need to ask someone to help you lift the object. Okay, it might need maybe one or more people lifting the object, so it is actually very good for you to observe. The other thing, step two, is to clear your path, to make sure make sure that where you're going to drop the object is clear. There's nothing in your way, nothing that could actually cause any slips, any trips, any falls. You're good to go. Okay. So, as part of the second step, you need to adopt a secure stance. So that's basically with your legs and shoulders width apart on either side of the object. You need to keep your back straight. That is absolutely important. Okay, keep your back straight. Then you bend your legs, um, and have a solid grip on the object. Okay, and then you begin to lift the object, extending your legs straight and keeping your back straight. It's very important to keep your back straight at all times. I've seen many people, myself included, not necessarily within a construction environment, but basically just picking up an object, not thinking about it, not keeping my back straight, and causing some serious harm. Okay, so it's absolutely important that you keep your back straight at all times. Now, the workbook, actually, pages 18 to 19, does include a practical assessment of manual handling. Okay, use these steps, I've also included the slides in your workbook as well. So do use these slides as a reference, but there's also a practical assessment of manual handling in your workbook. Next thing, obviously, once you've picked up your load, you move smoothly to your destination, and you need to keep the object close to your body. So it should be sort of waist height. Please do not run, okay, or sort of brisk walking to where you're going, because you could actually trip, fall, and harm yourself, okay? And when you get to where you're going, do the same thing as when you were picking up the load. So just basically, you know, observing a stance, your back straight, gently put the load down. Okay, but I cannot stress that it's absolutely important for you to keep your back straight and observe correct manual handling. And if you need any more information, please go through the slides. Okay, I've put them in your workbook. Protecting yourself. So you absolutely need to protect yourself. Okay, you need to protect yourself when you're lifting equipment. You need to follow the operating instructions for lifting equipment. You need to follow safety guide advice and guidance when using lifting equipment. And again, lifting equipment includes things like forklift trucks and so on and so forth. You need to have suitable personal protective equipment, or PPEs, worn at all times. And PPE includes your protective footwear, obviously very important when you're picking up a heavy load, or a box that's heavy. Protective gloves, and that could be, or that is basically to avoid any cuts, any bruises. You wear your hard hat, ear defenders where necessary, and your high vis jackets or waistcoats. Any respirators. These are just basically examples of PPE, PPE equipment, and any protective glasses or goggles. Okay. Now, one of the things I'm going to ask you guys to do is to also list any PPE that should be worn during manual handling. So just take out a piece of paper and list any PPE or personal protective equipment that should be worn during manual handling. Okay? So going back to protecting yourself, some of the we're going to look at some examples of PPE used when carrying out manual handling operations. So you can see here, this lovely gent has some goggles on. He's got his protective gloves and his protective footwear. You can see here also that the gentleman here carrying out a task has also got his high-vis vest. He's got some goggles on, and is actually adopting also his footwear, and is actually adopting safe procedures when sort of carrying out manual handling operation. some of the equipment here that can help you when trying to lift a heavy object includes a wheelbarrow, so that's where you have to sort of move things across site, okay, a sack barrow, a paving slab lifter, okay, so these are some of the equipment that could come in or are very useful when you have to lift heavy load. Again, you can see on here some more examples include forklift trucks. These are also used, apart from construction sites, they're used in warehouses, and that's where you have to carry, a considerable amount of pallets across the site or across the warehouse, okay? And then you have cranes for, very heavy sort of container type lifting, and then you have the pallet trucks here as well. Now, I also have to talk about reporting a problem because it is very important that you do report any problems that arise in the construction environment, whether that is, a manual handling problem or, an accident or a near miss, like we talked about in the first module. So don't ignore a health and safety problem. Okay, don't just think. Remember what we said in the first module, which is as far as is practicably possible, do your best when it comes to health and safety. Okay, so don't ignore, don't think, oh, it's not my problem, I'm not going to, do it, because if it doesn't harm you, it could harm someone else. Okay, so you must don't ignore any health and safety problems. If there is a health and safety related problem, you need to speak to the employer or the person in control and try and sort out the issue. Okay, contact your work or safety representative. Sometimes it's your the foreman or the manager, the construction site manager. Okay, obviously where more serious, do contact your trade union or safety representative. For a more serious problem, obviously that would be reported to the health and safety executives or the HSE. Okay, and that's where the employer has possibly basically ignored that problem for a period of time, or if there's a health and safety problem that results in someone being off work for 3 days or more. Okay, and if an accident takes place, the requirements of RIDDOR, remember we talked about that in Module 1, must be followed. Okay. Right, so that concludes the end of Module 2, which is manual handling. Please go to your workbooks and complete the activity for Module 2. If you have any questions, please drop me an email and I'm more than happy to support you. Thank you so much for watching.